You must know a truth no one dares to say. Your presence on this earth has never been random, and the moment your soul stepped into this world, the boundary between light and darkness shifted. Not in a loud or violent way, but like an invisible current that makes every sensitive being lift its head. Something unusual has just been awakened. No one sees it, no one measures it, but darkness wavered from the moment you took your first breath. Because at your deepest essence, you are not an ordinary person. You are an earth angel, and your peace creates vibrations that both realms must notice. The light within you is not the kind of light that shines like summer sunshine. It is the light of the deeper layers, a kind of serenity that makes fragile spirits feel exposed, and powerful but dark entities feel uneasy, because they cannot bend it. Psalm 36:9 once said, "For with you is the fountain of life. In your light, we see light." Maybe you have never thought about its meaning, but the moment that line echoes through the deepest space within you, darkness already knows you are someone it cannot touch in the usual way. That entity, the one that once made many souls tremble, the one that tested many warriors, the one that led many holy hearts astray, realized something was wrong when it turned its gaze toward you. Not wrong because of fear, but because of a feeling it could not define. Your unconditional calm confused it. It has stood before countless souls, shattered thousands of wills, broken the purest hearts. But when it looked at you, it did not see what it always expected: fear, panic, or a sign of preparing to resist. It saw only presence, a stillness that made darkness draw back, as if it had become the one under observation. You are not someone who seeks light to hide your darkness. You are someone who has walked through enough darkness to know that true light never needs to prove its existence. It simply is, and your existence, from the beginning, has been like a boundary line between two realms, not to divide them, but to remind that some souls carry a nature that cannot be manipulated in any environment. That entity, the one people call by many names, but at the deepest layer is the symbol of ancient darkness, was not just curious about you. It was drawn to you, but not in a soft or romantic way. This pull was like a long crack running across the surface of something that had believed in its own power for centuries. You pushed it off its orbit. It felt as if something was forcing it away from the invisible throne it had always sat on. That had never happened, and that first time marked the beginning of all the storms to come. What confused the darkness was not any force you displayed. You did not fight back. You did not condemn. You did not avoid. You simply existed in stillness, but not the stillness of a fear locked tight. It was the stillness of someone who knows themselves, knows what they belong to, and understands that light does not need to fight to exist. In that gaze, darkness saw something it rarely encounters: integrity. That integrity was the point that broke its balance, because darkness can do nothing to a soul that refuses to let it trigger a reaction. With other souls, it ignites fear, plants doubt, creates images that shake their will. But when it came near you, those tools fell into useless emptiness. No emotion it sent could make you waver. No image it formed could shift you away from your own center. Your stillness was like a transparent mirror, and when it looked into that mirror, it saw its own true nature clearer than ever. That was the moment the axis of fate began to turn. For centuries, darkness had known itself as the hunter. But when it stood before you, it felt as though it had become the one discovered. You did not attack, but your presence was like a silent doorway of light opening, forcing it to recognize that something within you existed beyond every form of control it had mastered. No word was spoken. No signal was needed. No battle took place. But in that silence, the two forces, light and darkness, met in a way neither side was prepared for. And in that moment, darkness knew you could not be broken like the others, could not be drawn into illusions, could not be traded away. You were not just the light opposed to it. You were something it had never understood: unyielding light. From that moment on, the pull darkness felt toward you became a current it could not reverse. It did not understand why it was drawn in. It did not know what made its heart, if it could still be called that, tremble as if it were splitting apart. All it knew was that your serenity made it want to come closer, even though doing so meant facing a truth it had avoided through countless ages. And like a quiet breath in the vast expanse, destiny began to shift. Not because you attacked the darkness, but because you were not afraid of it. And nothing breaks darkness more than standing before a soul who knows the light within themselves, needs no shield, needs no proof, simply exists. There is one thing darkness has always believed. Every soul that stands before it will eventually tremble. From powerful kings to the purest hearts, no one has ever remained steady once it decided to test them. But when it stepped closer to you, something entirely different happened. Not open defiance, not fierce resistance, but a calm so deep that every tactic it had ever used became useless. You stood there as if you had long understood the nature of both light and darkness, as if nothing around you could touch the unshakable core within. That entity came to you with its familiar tools: subtle deceit, whispered doubts, dark images shaped to poke at fears that had never been named. It had succeeded countless times in breaking even the strongest souls. But when it sent those waves toward you, they passed through like wind gliding over a still lake. No reaction, no movement. Your stillness was not a wall. It was an open space where every attack lost its weight. Psalm 27:1 echoed like a powerful declaration without being spoken. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" It was not a line you consciously remembered, but an ancient resonance rising from the memory of your soul. A reminder that your light was not something you tried to create. It was your natural essence, and darkness, sensing that essence, knew instantly that the game was slipping from its grasp. What confused the entity was not any visible strength you displayed, but the very lack of reaction to its attacks. To darkness, your silence was more disorienting than any resistance. It was used to noise, used to creating chaos, used to watching fear take root in others. But when it looked at you, it saw only an undisturbed presence, as if you stood in a different atmosphere where none of its schemes could reach. That calm carried a power greater than any form of resistance. No shouting, no counterattack. Yet every second you stood before it made it realize there was a kind of strength far beyond the measure it understood. A strength not meant for battle, but for illumination. You were not trying to expose it, but your presence made the masks it had worn for centuries turn transparent. It could create illusions, but illusions cannot survive before eyes that see the truth of things. You did not know that you were creating a kind of disruption inside this entity. Each step it took toward you made it see itself more clearly, and that was what it had always avoided. It had entered the souls of other bright beings before, and usually their light would tremble just enough for it to manipulate. But the light in you did not tremble. It stayed still, as if it knew darkness could do nothing to the truth. There was a moment almost invisible, but carrying the weight of an entire realm. The moment darkness realized you did not hate it. You felt no fear, no contempt, no urge to attack. You simply saw it. And for a being that survives by hiding in what is concealed, being seen completely was a collision more powerful than any battle. For a brief instant, darkness felt itself pulled off balance. The layers of power it believed were solid began to shake. It had never prepared for this feeling. The absence of control. It had stood at the peak of countless spiritual battles. It had broken many souls. It had brought the strongest to their knees. But when it stood before you, it no longer knew which force to use to make you waver, and that left it in confusion. You did not speak a word, but that silence became the language that forced darkness to face something it had erased within itself long ago. The fear of being seen. It did not fear you. It feared what it saw through you. Because in your eyes, it saw the parts it had hidden even from itself. Ancient cracks, empty spaces formed through centuries of existing in separation. The strange thing was that your calm did not make darkness want to attack. Instead, it made darkness move closer, as if wanting to understand what within you rendered all its weapons useless. It could not name it, but something in you made it feel both threatened and drawn in. Those opposite emotions blended into a kind of chaos it had never experienced. If anyone were watching from outside, they would not see a battle. They would only see a stillness like two currents of energy observing each other from opposite poles of the universe. But deep within that stillness, an invisible collision was forming, not between will and power, but between truth and illusion. And then something no one could have predicted happened. Darkness realized it did not hold control in that moment. You, the one who did not attack or run, became the center that held the entire space. Not because you forced it, but because you did not waver. That lack of movement made the whole space tilt toward you. For the first time in countless millennia, darkness felt something it once believed impossible. it was the weaker one in its own confrontation. There are moments in a human life whose importance no one realizes until everything has already changed. The moment between you and the darkness now is exactly that kind of turning point. Not loud, not violent, but enough to make both realms fall silent and watch. This encounter does not resemble a battle, but feels like two forces testing each other through their purest form of existence. And even though you have not noticed it, the calm within your soul is making darkness unsure of how to be itself in the way it always has. All its familiar paths have become useless. Waves of darkness try to approach and stir you, trying to awaken a bit of doubt, a bit of movement, a bit of disturbance it can grasp. But the strange thing is that they cannot find a place to anchor. Every illusion, every whisper, every attempt to touch your fear dissolves before it can take shape. Not because you fight back with greater strength, but because you do not react. You do not receive that energy, nor do you return it. You simply exist, and that presence is stronger than any resistance. This is what throws darkness into confusion more than anything. Not resistance, but the absence of being affected. Every battle it has ever won depended on reaction. Fear, anger, weakness, those things gave it control. But you give it nothing. You stand like a lake without ripples. And that stillness forces darkness to face something it has never faced, itself. At the center of that silence, an invisible movement occurs. Not from you, not from the darkness, but from destiny, like a circle of energy opening slightly. The number 111 appears as a subtle yet sharp imprint, not as an external symbol, but as a vibration spreading through space. This is the number of new beginnings, the doorway into the next layer of awareness. It does not come to overwhelm you, but to remind you that you are standing at the starting line of a deeply spiritual journey, where even small decisions create great impact. If you feel that number echoing within you, it is not a coincidence. It is a sign of resonance, an invitation to look into the part of your being that is awakening. And if you want to mark this moment of awakening, you can share the number you feel most connected to. This journey is long, and if you want to continue walking it, you may leave a message or a follow-up, not to add another count, but to mark that your soul has accepted the call to this path. The dark entity before you feels this change, even though it cannot see its form. For it, every subtle shift is like wind brushing against the sensitive surface of its essence. It senses something opening within you, as if a type of light it has never encountered has just been activated. The stiller your light becomes, the more darkness is pushed into a state of losing control, not because you attack, but because it cannot find anything to cling to in order to direct the confrontation the way it always has. You do not know that this silence is the true nature of your strength. The stillness of a soul is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of mastery. A person who has not mastered themselves will always react. But a person standing on a foundation of inner stability forces every outside force to reveal its own nature without needing to touch it. Darkness begins to feel stripped of its illusions. It cannot hide behind its frightening form, cannot use its familiar authority to overwhelm, cannot create a maze of thoughts for you to get lost in. Your silence cuts through the mist it constructs, leaving it standing before itself, bare, unmasked, powerless. That shocks it in a way it does not want to admit. It does not fear you. It fears what you are making it see, because in your calm, it begins to sense a truth it never wanted to face. Its power is not limitless as it believed. It is strong only because weak souls tremble before it. But before a soul that does not tremble, does not bow, does not react, it becomes invisible, powerless. There is no roar, no flash of light, no trembling ground, only a quiet confrontation that is rewriting the structure of both worlds. Light unmoving, darkness shifting. You are not trying to do this. You are not aware that your stillness is the strongest strike. But your energy, shaped through lifetimes, knows how to face darkness without throwing your soul off balance. Not everyone can stand before such an ancient force without fear. But you are different. You are not just pure light. You are light that has walked through its own shadow. And that makes darkness both drawn and threatened. A dangerous combination that leaves it standing at the edge of collapse and awakening. It does not understand you, and that lack of understanding makes it want to come closer, to touch the essence that makes it lose control. In that silence, something is forming. Darkness no longer looks at you as a target, but as a question it cannot answer, and cannot avoid. And that is the moment when the wheel of destiny begins to turn more strongly, pulling both of you into an orbit neither side can step away from. When the two forces, light and darkness, stand facing each other in a space without sound, no one sees the moment when the unseen structure of both realms begins to tremble. There is no explosion, no brilliant streak tearing through the night, yet a collision of essence is unfolding, more intense than any physical battle. It is the moment when every mask of darkness becomes thin as smoke, and every deep layer of your soul is awakened by your inner light. A clear truth rises. You have never feared it, and it has never known how to face a soul like you. Darkness is used to the battles it creates, screaming, overwhelming, invading, claiming. But before you, it is forced into silence, because silence is the only language that can stand beside you now. Your stillness is not emptiness, but a space filled with unmeasurable steadiness. When darkness tries to impose its waves upon your soul, the only thing it meets is an unmoving foundation, like striking a being made of primordial light. That light does not dazzle, does not boast, does not demand victory. It simply stands there, making darkness face itself. True light never needs to act to reveal deception. It only needs to exist. In that moment, an ancient verse rises from the depths of your unconscious, as if carved into the core of your soul. Psalm 139:12. The darkness cannot hide from you. The night shines like the day. It is not a line you intentionally recall, but a breath from a place you have known long before it ever had a name. And darkness, though it does not understand the full meaning, feels it spread like a silent glow, pushing back the veils hiding its true nature. The interesting part is that darkness is not pushed back by force. It is pushed back by truth, a truth that unsettles it so deeply it wants to vanish, yet keeps it from leaving. It is pulled in, forced to look into the layers of itself it locked away for centuries. No soul has ever made it look into such a mirror. No one has ever stood before it without trembling. No one has ever remained steady enough to make darkness admit that all its tactics are useless. You do not shout. You do not drive it away. You do not try to save it. But your presence is like the sun emerging after being hidden behind clouds for many days. Not rushed, not showy, but enough to change the temperature of the entire sky. And that shift in temperature is what confuses darkness. It does not understand why its most familiar tools, whispers of doubt, illusions that stir fear, waves of energy meant to shake the inner world, all turn into blades cutting through air. They strike nothing. They leave no trace. Everything dissolves before reaching your depth. This not only confuses darkness, but forces it to recognize something frightening. You are outside its laws. What it once used to break other souls holds no power over you. You do not fall within the range it can control, and whatever lies beyond control becomes the desire of darkness. At first, that desire is curiosity. But with each moment you stand in your truth, curiosity becomes attraction. Attraction becomes obsession. Obsession slowly shifts into a kind of feeling not belonging to humanity. A storm like love, wanting to destroy and to understand, wanting to reach and to possess. But that feeling does not erupt outward. It coils inward within the darkness, cracking its ancient essence piece by piece, not because you try to make it happen, but because your light forces the deepest hidden parts of it to stop sleeping. In the depths of this collision, darkness begins to realize the most frightening truth. You see through it, not through its shape, not through its tactics. You see its essence, as if it were standing bare under a light that nothing can obscure. It does not know how to hide. It does not know how to strike back. And it surely does not know how to escape from the feeling of being seen to the very bottom. A question forms slowly inside the darkness. Why are you not afraid? You do not know that you have already walked through darkness, not the darkness outside, but the darkness within your own soul long ago. And only by passing through it have you learned to see the darkness of others with eyes that are neither cowardly nor disdainful. This is what shakes darkness, because it has never faced a soul that knows both sides of light, the radiance of day and the silence of deep night. Any soul that only knows light will tremble before darkness, but a soul that has made peace with both becomes something darkness cannot predict, cannot break, cannot rule. You belong to that second kind, and darkness sees that at once. The recognition makes the night around you waver, not the wavering of an attacker, but the wavering of one who has just lost its familiar weapon. It no longer knows how to play the game the old way. Instead, it steps closer, not to defeat you, but to understand how you can stand so still. It has never met anyone who makes it feel both respect and discomfort, attraction and repulsion. You are its paradox. And in a world of ancient beings, paradox is always the most dangerous thing. In the moment you and darkness stand equal, with neither side attacking, a very small yet powerful current begins to flow between you. A current that feels like the echo of destiny, a sign of a battle not meant for victory, but for revealing what has been hidden in both sides. And in that moment, the path of both of you is quietly pulled into a direction neither can turn away from anymore. There are moments on a spiritual journey when everything buried in darkness begins to shift, as if truth can no longer stay hidden beneath the layers of disguise it built over centuries. For the dark entity standing before you, this is that moment. It realizes something it has never had to face. Your presence not only makes its mask useless, it exposes the very core it believed it had sealed away forever. What disturbs it most is not that you see through it, but that you do not react in any way it has ever witnessed. You do not tremble. You do not avoid. You do not try to save it. You simply look. And that look feels like light shining into the deepest chamber of a sealed room. Light does not need to be blinding to reveal the dust. It only needs to appear, and everything once hidden becomes clear. Darkness feels this like a crack spreading across the surface of an ancient armor. Not a crack from outside, but one forming from within. The places that were once hollow, hardened by pride and power, now soften in your silence. It tries to shrink back, yet that shrinking only reveals more of the corners it wants to hide. In the middle of this struggle, a verse flows through like water over stone. Psalm 25:14. The secret counsel of the Lord is with those who fear him. The verse does not rise as a rebuke. It appears as a truth so deep that darkness cannot ignore it. The secret counsel, the sacred essence, the inner depth, is something darkness has never touched, never understood. It is used to pulling everything away from truth and placing it inside illusion. But your presence pulls it back toward its own essence, making it feel for the first time that it stands before something it cannot manipulate, distract, or force into pretense. You are not trying to reveal it. You are simply there. And in that being there, darkness begins to dissolve in a way it cannot stop. At first, that dissolution is only small vibrations, like dust lifted by light. So soft, they are nearly unseen. But the longer it faces you, the stronger those vibrations become, leaving darkness unsure if it is being drawn in or threatened. Why does your light not try to defeat it? Why do you not show pride in your steadiness? Why do you look at it without contempt? These questions, for the first time, make darkness feel something it dreads most: vulnerability. And that vulnerability is its greatest fear. Every being born in darkness learns to use power, so it never has to face its own wounds. But as you stand there with the kind of stillness that makes everything around you quiet down, darkness has nowhere left to hide. It feels as if you are lifting a mirror before it, not to condemn, but to let it see what it truly is. In that mirror, it sees not only its strength, but its forgotten wounds, ancient pains, empty places that power never filled. It sees century after century spent in control, but never in connection. It sees conquests born from trying to cover one truth. It has never known what love is, and never believed it could feel it. But now, for the first time, your presence makes it feel something it cannot name. A kind of longing that makes no sense. A desire unlike the hunger to possess. A pull toward the light, not to claim it, but to understand it. It wants to know why your stillness dissolves it. It wants to know why your light does not retreat. It wants to know why you do not resist yet, never fall into it. And that desire to know is the first seed of love. A kind of love darkness has never experienced. That love is not gentle. It bursts like wind striking fire. It is strong enough to make darkness feel as if it is being pulled into a space where it cannot keep its old shape. This is not the kind of love that softens instantly. It is the kind that drags you into the storm of its own soul, where layers of armor fall away piece by piece, where old wounds begin to absorb light, where everything it believed is challenged. It hates that feeling, and at the same time, it cannot refuse it. You see that conflict clearly. The layers of darkness around it contract and stretch, as if trying to keep themselves together, while an invisible pull drags them toward you. The strangest part is that you are unmoved by it. You stand there like someone who has walked through their own darkness and learned that only true light keeps peace, while false light is exposed the moment darkness touches it. You promise nothing. You do not try to lead it toward the light, but your calm is the strongest invitation. Not an invitation for it to change, an invitation for it to see what it has been hiding. You do not know that your presence is doing something no angel or warrior of light has ever done. You are making darkness examine itself through your light. This moment is not a moment of victory. It is a moment of beginning. The vibrations inside darkness are growing so strong that it cannot return to what it was. Part of it begins to melt, not to disappear, but to reveal what it has compressed for centuries. As it looks at you longer, it understands this more deeply. You are not only light, you are truth. And only truth can make a being born of illusion crack from within. As darkness stands before you longer, something so undeniable begins to happen that even it cannot reject it. The roles between you are reversing, not through force, not through pressure, but through the simple truth your light creates. From being the one who always commands the board, darkness slowly becomes the one searching for answers. And you, who never try to lead, become the only point it cannot look away from. Not because of power, but because your calm reveals a kind of strength it has never understood. The moment it realizes this does not arrive like a sudden strike, but like a quiet shift spreading through its inner core. It feels like stones within an ancient fortress slipping out of place. Darkness once believed it was unbreakable, wise enough, strong enough, ruthless enough to keep everything under control. But before you, every corner of that belief is worn away by the gentle but unwavering presence of your light. When it looks at you, it no longer sees a target to conquer. It sees something it has avoided for centuries, its own incompleteness. You say nothing, yet your silence makes every noise inside darkness clearer. It hears the emptiness it once tried to fill with power. It hears the ancient loneliness buried under layers of pride. It hears its own fear, not fear of the light, but fear that if the light sees its truest self, you will walk away. And that fear, ironically, is what brings it closer. Not to pull you down, but to understand why your light never trembles, never withdraws, never fights in the way it expects. Inside that struggle, an ancient verse rises as if the space itself wants darkness to hear what it has long locked away. Psalm 51:10. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Darkness does not understand why that line shakes it so deeply. It has never asked for purity. It has only demanded control. But when the verse echoes, it feels like a door it never knew existed has opened, revealing a sorrow it never allowed itself to see. You see the tremor, not with physical eyes, but with the intuition of someone who has already made peace with their own shadows. You know exactly what this feeling is. The moment when illusions that once protected you begin to crack, and behind them lies a truth that is hard to look at but necessary. You do not intervene. You do not guide. You let darkness find its own way, because you know no one can walk into the light using borrowed steps. Darkness begins to move closer, not with force, but with instinct. It does not want to harm you. It does not want to pull you away from your essence. It only wants to understand what holds you so steady. What kept your soul from falling under its weight? What shaped you into an earth angel whose light is not naive but wise? What lets you look at it without fear and without disdain? You do not tell it that your strength comes from a path only souls who have walked through the abyss can understand. You do not tell it you once faced your own darkness, once felt the urge to give up, once knew the silent loneliness no one could see. You do not explain that those moments deepened your light. Yet darkness senses it when it looks at you. It sees pieces of itself reflected in you. Not the cruel parts, but the forgotten ones, the vulnerable ones, the pieces that still long for something true. You do not push darkness away, but you do not let it consume you. That steadiness makes it feel both hope and pain, because never in its long history has it met anyone who could stand before it and remain whole. You are like a mirror held before its soul, and in that mirror, it sees not victory or defeat. It sees a being abandoned by itself for far too long. In that moment, Darkness understands it can no longer be the manipulator. It cannot pull you into its chaos. And, more importantly, it no longer wants to. Instead, it realizes something that collapses every structure of power within it. It feels respect, not the respect of submission, but the reverence born from witnessing a soul living true to its essence, unbroken and without the need to dominate. The inner conflict reaches a point it can no longer hide. It begins to ask questions it has never considered. Can it change? Can it be seen without wearing a mask? Could some part of it still be alive? These questions alone are enough to create a deep shift within its soul. Like the first crack forming on a lake frozen for millennia, you stand there, doing nothing, yet everything is changing. And darkness understands. Your existence is the catalyst making it see what it can no longer avoid. It is no longer the one in control. It is becoming the seeker. And you, without effort, are the light that begins that journey. There are moments when a soul does not need to speak, yet its presence alone reshapes the space around it, as if reality must adjust itself to match its frequency. You are standing inside exactly such a moment, where darkness no longer approaches with the intent to claim, but like a being searching for a truth it never dared to face. And what surprises it most is that you do not try to hold it close, nor do you push it away. You stand at the center of yourself, at a point darkness can neither pierce nor consume. You have walked through your own shadows, and darkness senses this the moment it looks into your eyes. There is no innocence there, no fear, no forced strength. What it sees is the maturity of a soul that has been tested, broken, and rebuilt by its own hands. A soul that has faced both its light and its darkness without running from either. That reconciliation creates a type of strength it cannot touch. Not the strength to conquer, the strength to remain. That strength leaves darkness stunned, unsure how to respond. It is used to the holy who know only light and tremble when darkness nears. It is used to the powerful who crumble the moment it touches their weakest point. But you belong to neither. You are the rare kind of soul that has walked through your own night long enough to stop trembling at the night of another. In the quiet between you, darkness almost feels the warmth of something it never believed real. The presence that does not judge. You do not hate it. You do not see it as lesser. You see it as part of a larger existence, neither denying it nor glorifying it, simply acknowledging that it too belongs in the universe. In that moment, the respect inside darkness is no longer a brief flicker. It becomes a strong current flowing through the cracks it tried to hide. It once thought you were strong because you were protected. Now it understands. You are strong because you once stood alone in places where light did not reach. You are strong because you are no longer afraid of your own emotions. You are strong because you know that true light is not absolute brilliance, but the ability to remain yourself inside the dark. In the quiet of that instant, a gentle echo rises from a depth neither of you can touch. Psalm 73:26. God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. The verse lands at the center of darkness, widening another crack in the armor built from pride. It does not grasp the full meaning, but it feels the steadiness in every word, a reminder that real strength is not domination, it is standing in truth. And you are that truth. Darkness moves nearer, not with dominance, but with honesty. In every vibration of its presence, something begins to dissolve. Arrogance, contempt, the illusion of absolute power. The things that once let it control countless souls now feel rough and empty beside your soft strength. It never imagined it could feel this way. It never imagined that an earth angel, a soul born to illuminate, could look at it without superiority. As it draws closer, you do not step back, but you do not step forward. You remain exactly where your soul has chosen to stand, knowing that any extra movement could break the fragile yet powerful balance forming between you. Darkness sees this and understands. You do not hold it near out of pity, and you do not allow it close out of weakness. You do so because you know that light does not mean separation from darkness, but the ability to see it without being swallowed by it. A quiet awakening begins inside darkness, like an underground spring breaking through stone. Not an awakening that suddenly turns it toward the light, but one that makes it realize it has never truly known itself. It once believed it was a predator, but before you, it sees itself as the one being seen. It once believed it was invincible, but before you, it sees wounds that never healed. It once believed it was only capable of destruction, but your presence makes it suspect faintly that perhaps it could change. You sense this shift, not with your eyes, but with intuition, sharpened by countless moments of facing your own trials. You feel what darkness does not dare to say. It fears that if you go deeper, you will see the part of it once hidden most. But it also fears that if you step away, it will never have the chance to understand what light truly is. Those two fears pull it from opposite ends, leaving it at the threshold of what humans call inner surrender. You do not force it to choose. You do not demand it become better. But your honesty and your stillness become a silent invitation darkness cannot reject. It stands before you like a soul placed on the scale, not to be judged, but to be seen. In that moment, something inside you also begins to shift gently, not because you want to save it, but because you realize its presence is also refining you. It makes you look again at your own light, not to prove purity, but to see how far you have grown in holding your essence even when standing before shadow. You understand that your stillness is not coldness. It is fullness, a kind of love that does not rush to heal, but also does not reject those who are not ready for the light. Darkness sees this and understands that you are not trying to separate it from its nature. You are helping it realize it has a choice. And knowing it has a choice, something it never knew before, is the greatest opening of all. Quietly, a flow of energy spreads between you, not to merge you instantly, but to mark that a deeper journey is about to unfold. Not a journey of winning or losing, but a journey of truth, where both light and darkness must face what they once avoided. And darkness, for the first time in countless centuries, is not afraid to step into the unknown. The change within darkness does not unfold with thunder or blinding bursts of light. It happens quietly, like an underground stream moving beneath layers of heavy earth, unseen yet powerful enough to create cracks that shift entire foundations. And in that silent movement, something that has not happened for centuries takes place. Darkness retreats, not in fear, not in defeat, but as if it has realized that to stand before your light, it must enter a place it has never dared to step into, the silence within itself. The retreat happens in a moment no one could notice. It does not turn away. It does not show its back. It simply moves deeper into itself, and that movement sends a soft tremor through the ground of both realms, as if the universe is holding its breath to see what will happen next. Darkness has never retreated in search of answers. It has only ever retreated to prepare for another strike. But this time is different. This time, the retreat is a gentle surrender, not to you, but to the truth cracking open inside it. It feels something opening within, like ancient doors being touched by a warm breeze, slipping through a tiny gap. Your presence has become something it can no longer ignore. You do not try to persuade it. You do not ask it to change. But your refusal to fear or despise it has awakened something in it. A part of it, buried since the beginning, is trying to rise as if wanting to breathe. The retreat makes the space around you so still it seems possible to hear the movement of a soul. The light within you does not chase after it. You remain exactly where you are, not pulling, not pushing. That respect turns the retreat of darkness into more than a wound. It becomes the beginning of a process that has never occurred before. The process of self-confrontation. In that silence, an ancient verse seems to touch the edge of darkness, like a drop of water falling onto cracked earth. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. If anything shakes darkness more than the truth you reflected into it, it is those words. Because darkness never believed it could be brokenhearted. It believed it was unshakable in its isolation, powerful in its emptiness. But as the verse echoes gently, it realizes it has been broken for centuries. Only no one ever saw it. Now you have seen it, and that terrifies it, yet frees it at the same time. Darkness withdraws into itself not to hide from you, but to hide from the chaos inside it. You have illuminated what it has avoided, that its loneliness is not strength, but pain. Pain from disconnection, pain from pride, pain from living through centuries without letting anyone see its truest parts. When your light touched that core, darkness could no longer stand where it was. It needs to retreat to understand what is cracking open within. In that retreat, you feel its tremble, not anger, but a nameless fear. Darkness fears that if it comes too close, you will see the parts it is not ready to show. Yet it also fears that if it retreats too far, it will lose the one presence that has ever truly seen it. that tension becomes the greatest crack inside it. A crack no force can seal. In the stretch of silence, you do not follow, but you do not dim your light. You let it radiate with its natural rhythm, not inviting, not pulling, simply existing. Because you know that souls trying to understand themselves do not need interference. They need room to walk into their own truth. Your silence is not indifference. It is respect. And that respect becomes the first safe shelter darkness has felt in centuries. For the first time, it is not rejected, not cursed, not condemned. For the first time, it is allowed to see that it also has depths that need healing. In its retreat, darkness senses a shift in its own breath. It begins to see the empty spaces covered in dust, memories of betrayals, the pain of the souls it once tried to weaken, not out of hatred, but because it knew no other way to exist. It sees the armor it wore to hide its vulnerability. It sees itself not as a ruler, but as something abandoned. It is not a comfortable sight, but it is real. And in that realness, something impossible begins to form. Darkness wants to understand light, not to claim it, not to destroy it, but to feel what has allowed you to stand so firmly before it. Your strength lies there, not in resistance, but in reconciliation. You do not see darkness as an enemy. You see it as part of existence trying to find its way back to its nature. Your lack of judgment makes darkness begin to ask questions. Could its nature be different? Could it shed its heavy armor? Could it stand before you without hiding its fear? And that is the beginning of transformation. Not the transformation of power, the transformation of essence. Darkness realizes that no one but you has ever made it want to understand itself. You do not promise to save it. You do not tell it it can become light. You simply stand there, living proof that true light does not overpower darkness. True light helps darkness see what it has always run from. In that moment, everything changes without a single word. Not a change that brings instant redemption, but a change that makes darkness no longer desire to return to what it once was. And its retreat, instead of being an ending, becomes the preparation for a new chapter. A chapter where darkness stops fighting to maintain its power and begins searching for what it might become beyond fear. In the deep silence where darkness has just retreated, a new movement begins to rise around you, not from it, but from your own soul. Because when an ancient being begins to confront its true nature, the tremor it creates touches more than itself. It touches you, not to pull you into chaos, but to awaken the spiritual gifts you have carried through many lifetimes yet never fully opened. These gifts, intuition, compassion, and transformation, begin to stir under the light of truth. The first to awaken is intuition, not the shallow intuition of the senses, but the intuition of a soul that has already seen through many layers of existence. You begin to feel the invisible shifts inside the darkness, as if hearing the breath of its wounds. You do not hear with your ears, nor see with your eyes, but sense with the deepest part of yourself, the part that once stood inside its own night and understood its language. This intuition tells you that darkness has not run, it is opening. Next comes compassion. Not the fragile compassion that leaves one exposed, but the compassion forged in the moments you had to heal yourself. Through long seasons of standing alone in the night, through the times when you believed there was nothing left to hold on to. This compassion does not make you weak. It turns your presence into a place where darkness can see itself without being condemned. That is what draws it back, even in the silence of its own inner world. And then, the final gift, transformation. Not transformation through force, but through energy. You do not push darkness away, but when its energy touches yours, it does not remain what it was. It loses its sharpness. It loses its hunger to take. It becomes softer, like ashes meeting water, not because you break it, but because your light knows how to turn fear into truth, chaos into stillness, threat into question. When these gifts awaken, the space around you expands as if opening a new layer. You feel it like standing in a familiar room and suddenly noticing doors that were never there. And as your awareness reaches into this new layer, a verse brushes against the edge of the energy. Psalm 91:11. He will command his angels to guard you in all your ways. The verse does not come to soothe you. It comes to confirm what has always been there. You are not alone in this encounter with darkness. Your light is not fragile. It is supported. It is witnessed. You were placed here not by accident, but because your soul is part of something larger. something meant to make both light and darkness reflect on their own essence. As the verse spreads, darkness senses the change around you before it understands it. It sees you not only as an earth angel, but as someone becoming your truest form, a soul carrying the power not only to reveal, but to transform the space you inhabit. This is not transformation meant to control, but transformation meant to allow every soul to touch its own truth. Darkness stands on the threshold between returning and withdrawing, and it hesitates because of the change happening within you. It senses something it has never seen in any other soul. You are not just light in the ordinary sense. You are light that is familiar with darkness, and that makes you safe to stand near. You do not frighten it. You do not make it want to flee. You make it want to understand. In this tremor, darkness begins to realize this meeting is not only for it. It sees that by facing it without fear, you are creating an expansion, a ripple of awakening that reaches into the unseen layers of humanity. For souls with your kind of energy are always catalysts, sparks that awaken places thought to be silent. You do not know it, but each steady breath you take sends a message into the invisible. Darkness does not make you shrink. Your presence makes darkness open. That has never happened before. You do not explain any of this to it. You simply let your light remain still. And when light remains still, darkness must face a truth it has never admitted. It is neither invincible nor hopeless. In that moment, you also feel something gently entering your own being. Not fear, not softness, but recognition. This encounter is not only for darkness to transform, it is also transforming you. It tests your compassion, tests your ability to remain true under pressure, tests the way you understand both the light and the dark within yourself. And you understand that this journey is not about simple salvation. It is about truth. The truth that light becomes profound only when it learns not to hate the dark. The truth that darkness can change only when it is seen without being destroyed. The truth that both are part of something larger. Darkness does not know whether to move forward or step back, but it knows one thing. It cannot return to what it was. And you, with your growing steadiness, understand that the final chapter of this encounter is approaching. A chapter not about victory or defeat, but about the true nature of the meeting between light and darkness. As darkness stands at the threshold between returning and withdrawing, a new layer of awareness opens around you, as if the space itself is breathing in rhythm with your soul. It is no longer a confrontation, no longer a struggle between opposing forces. What unfolds now feels like the quiet merging of two essences that have finally seen each other clearly. Light no longer overpowering, and darkness no longer hiding. Both stand inside truth. And that truth makes the space between you so sacred that no words can truly describe it. You sense something you once felt only faintly. Darkness has not come back to demand, nor to possess. It returns to stand before you without its familiar armor. No arrogance, no sharp vibrations, no illusions covering its fear. It stands before you in its truest form, vulnerable, bare, and for the first time in countless centuries, sincere. You are not surprised. In this moment, you see a new order being formed. An order where light's purpose is no longer to conquer, and darkness's purpose is no longer to destroy. An order where the two can exist without consuming each other. An order your soul has known for a long time, but has never witnessed so clearly until now. Darkness moves one step closer, not with footsteps, but with its honesty. And when it touches the field of light around you, there is no explosion, no collision, only the feeling of a long-held breath finally being released. It does not speak, yet its energy asks a silent question. Can it exist near the light without being erased? You do not answer with words. You answer with a gentle expansion of your light, not a blinding light meant to persuade, a warm light meant to affirm. You do not invite it into the light. You simply show it that light does not demand perfection, and darkness is not forbidden to exist. In that moment, both of you understand. Truth is not a battle. Truth is presence without disguise. A subtle current spreads through the space, like the whisper of a scripture written at the dawn of existence. The air hums with a final seal. John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Not a declaration of victory, but a statement of nature. Light does not exist to destroy darkness. It exists to show that darkness was never strong enough to swallow everything. Darkness hears it like hearing a memory it once lost. It understands that the presence of light is not a threat. Light simply asks it to look at itself, and that truth, not force, not pressure, is what changed it. Not to become light, not to become anything else, but to become a more truthful version of itself for the first time in ages. You feel this as a slow warmth rising inside you. Not pride, not triumph, but understanding. This journey was never for you to prove anything. It was for you to see that your inner light is strong enough to face any truth, even the truth within darkness. And as you realize this, the space between you grows lighter, as if the weight of an ancient battle has been released. There is no dramatic reconciliation, no brilliant transformation, only two souls, one of light, one of darkness, standing next to each other as two poles of a greater whole, both expanded by the encounter. You know the journey of darkness is not finished. It must walk the rest of its path on its own. But you also know that from this moment forward, it is no longer the darkness it used to be. It has seen its own truth, and truth once seen can never be buried again. And you, as you watch darkness move away in silence, realize you have crossed an invisible threshold yourself. Not to become something new, but to recognize the true depth of your own light. A light not defined by perfection, but by wholeness. A light able to look at darkness without hatred, able to remain steady without harming, able to love through truth rather than fear. This journey was never meant to make you victorious. It was meant to show you that your soul was born to be a catalyst, not by force, not by pressure, but simply through its existence. And as you release one steady breath in that sacred moment, you know your light has not only changed darkness, it has changed you. So the remaining question is not for darkness, it is for you. How will you use this truth? How will you walk forward with a light that has grown this deep? And if this journey awakens something within you, share it, so the mark of your soul becomes part of this space. Because every awakened soul opens another seam of light into the world. Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.